So before we start the actual video, quickly change this setting in your options if you plan on playing as Pyramidhead. Go to Options, Controls, then under Camera, you'll see Turn Right, Turn Left. By default, these will be blank. Change to E, change to Q. You'll understand why later in the video. Hey everybody, Brian7474 back again, and today we're going to talk about how to play as Pyramidhead, the newest killer in Dead by Daylight. If you want to learn how to master Pyramidhead as a killer, you're first going to have to learn how to efficiently use his powers. That's why this video we won't be focusing on his perks too much, and more we're going to focus how to fully utilize his power to increase your chase ability without the use of any specific perks. So to start, the Pyramidhead's power is called Rights of Judgment. To use the power, hold the power button activate, then move forward in any direction to carve a trail into the ground. Survivors who walk into this trail left behind by you will be given the Torment debuff and trigger Killer Instinct. Survivors who have the Torment debuff can be sent to a Cage of Atonement, which is basically like teleporting them to a hook. This can be done while they're in the dying state only, and only while they have the Torment debuff. Now to quickly elaborate how the Cage of Atonement works, basically when you're standing over a dying survivor suffering from the Torment debuff, you can send the survivor to a Cage of Atonement by using this button here. Survivors in a Cage of Atonement can be sacrificed just as if they were on a hook. When the survivor is on their second hook, instead of pounding the struggle button, the survivor is going to have to complete skill checks to delay the sacrifice. Being rescued or rescuing another survivor from a Cage of Atonement will remove the Torment debuff from that survivor. On top of all of that, while leaving behind a trail at any time, their Pyramidhead can press the attack button to fire off a punishment of the Dam, which is a sort of beam of power that damages the survivor. It works similarly to how the Doctor's shock therapy attack works, except there's no madness debuff, only damage. And it's a little bit harder to hit due to the smaller hitbox. But just like the Doctor's power, it goes through walls and obstacles. Now this might sound a bit complicated, but once you've played Pyramidhead for a round or two, you'll be able to understand his power much better. But he's not a killer I'd necessarily recommend for a newer player. He's clearly got a lot of stuff going on. And while he is very powerful, he's also got a lot of quirks. And in my opinion, he's going to have a bit of a higher skill ceiling compared to most other killers. After playing Pyramidhead for a short while though, I think many killer mains, including myself, feel that he's a very strong killer. So if you're a very good killer player, he's definitely someone you're going to want in your lineup. But let's talk about how to actually utilize his power in the most optimal fashion possible. Now just by watching this so far, you've probably already recognized the immediate strengths of the killer, but in case you haven't, I'll go over them. The killer has some fantastic map awareness. Clearly Pyramidhead doesn't have the speed to traverse the map like Billy or Spirit, and can't teleport like Freddy or Hag, but Pyramidhead makes up for this lack of mobility by having some fantastic map awareness. Pyramidhead's trail lasts more than 70 seconds by default without add-ons. That's actually quite a long time in a Dead by Daylight match. By leaving a trail through various locations of the map, I found I was almost always able to find a new survivor as I was finishing up a chase, and it didn't require the waste of a perk slot by using Barbecue or Discordance. Another big advantage Pyramidhead has is that this killer is one of the few that doesn't always have to eat pallets in a chase. Pyramidhead can shut down a decent pallet loop with his punishment beam pretty quickly, and because of that, I found him to be one of the best newer killers that BHVR has added to the game. It's very rare for the developers to add a killer that actually has a huge advantage in chases over other killers, since the majority of killers are unfortunately designed around eating pallets rather than playing around them, like Spirit, Nurse, even Huntress. It's nice to see BHVR try something a little bit new for a change. The third biggest advantage of Pyramidhead is that he can skip hooking. Just the ability to skip the animation of picking up a survivor, walking them to a hook that could be any distance away, and then hooking them. That alone is a fantastic advantage for this killer. But the Cage of Atonement does something else special too. It negates DS, the Decisive Strike ability. It can be a very quick way to clean up a group of slug survivors. Also, flashlights don't really mean shit to this killer, who doesn't have to pick up survivors when they're on the ground, if they have the Torment debuff. Now when it comes to weaknesses, there isn't really much to talk about when you're discussing the red pyramid thing, but there is a few key points we could talk about. While Pyramidhead does have fantastic map awareness, if played correctly, he doesn't have quite the same map control you'd have with Spirit, Nurse, Billy, or even Oni. This is probably the only reason you won't see him at the top of people's tier lists. Unfortunately, in this game, being able to travel the map quickly to react to survivors is extremely important, and that's something Pyramidhead is just average at best with. Another thing to consider when thinking about buying Pyramidhead is he's one of those killers that you're going to have to actually sit down and learn how to play. Now, you could really say this about most killers in the game. There's only a few killers that have a high skill ceiling, and with his Beam of Punishment, I think Pyramidhead is going to be one of those killers. No, it's not the hardest thing in the world to hit, but it's something that will require some practice before you'll be hitting survivors consistently with it. Another pretty sick note about the Beam of Punishment that I just wanted to mention is that it can actually do damage to more than one survivor at once, which is a pretty unique ability in DBD for killers. Not many killers have the capability to hit more than one survivor at once, and with Pyramidhead, you could technically down 2, 3, or even 4 survivors at once with one attack with the Beam of Punishment. And that is a really sick trick to pull off, by the way. Once again, this sort of thing would take quite a bit of practice to be able to pull off consistently, and it's possibly something that we could see nerfed in the future if it gets overutilized.
Nice.
Now, something that both the survivors and the killer are going to have to take into consideration is that survivors can totally negate any sort of map awareness by simply crouch walking over the trail you leave behind. Just like the Hag, the Pyramidhead's trail is only triggered if the survivor is standing when they cross it, or if they're running when they cross it. This means that urban evasion is going to be a major weakness for Pyramidhead, and something to consider. Many survivors are going to want to avoid being seen by Killer Instinct, and urban evasion is going to be their best bet. This also prevents the Torment debuff from being applied to the survivor. Now when you're playing as Pyramidhead, you're going to want to consider all of his abilities, rather than focusing on only using one or two. You're going to want to begin your games by leaving a trail in as many places as possible while looking for your first survivor. Much like the Hag, you should basically always be leaving behind your trail as a sort of quote-unquote trap, to not only notify you of where the survivors are, but also to give as many survivors on the map the Torment debuff as possible. When survivors have the Torment debuff, don't forget, you spend much less time carrying them to hooks, and saving time is something that always benefits a good killer, especially one like Pyramidhead who can't teleport or anything. It's funny, because in a way, when I was playing Pyramidhead, I almost felt like I was farming more than I was chasing and killing. Taking good care of your trail and allowing it to grow along as much of the map as possible will always benefit you long term, especially if you plant the trail in choke points you know survivors will run through, like on pallets or near windows. Now keep in mind that there are a lot of restrictions with this trail. One restriction is it will almost immediately disappear if you leave it on stairs, like the stairs in the basement. It will also disappear if you put it directly in front of a hook survivor, or a gen. All trails do disappear eventually, but if you put them in an appropriate flat surface, they tend to last quite a while, especially with add-ons, that increase the amount of time the trail lasts in the environment. Ironically enough, once again, Pyramidhead's biggest flaw is that he's not a very mobile killer, since he has no teleporting or running abilities. As such, the best way to keep things moving smoothly with this killer is to take advantage of being able to teleport survivors away from you with the Cage of Atonement ability. With the Cage of Atonement ability, you'll constantly have survivors scrambling around to save each other way across the map. This is a great way to keep them away from gens that they should be doing. Another very important tip that I'd give to new Pyramidhead players is you don't always have to use the punishment beam to get the hit. If you have a good angle on a survivor, feel free to go for the lunge attack, just like you would with any other killer. Yes, the punishment beam is a badass ability, and we're going to talk about how it's best used in a moment, but it is an attack that comes with the risk of wasting your time and slowing you down in a chase if you just keep missing your shots. Now the biggest advantage of what I've been calling the punishment beam is that it can shut down a good pallet loop completely. I'd argue that the Pyramidhead is up there with the Nurse in terms of his utility in a chase, and that's because he can shoot through walls, pallets, and other objects, much like Doctor, but doing actual damage. Because of all this, I'd argue he's probably one of the best killers in the game right now. If you've been watching this clip closely, you can see due to that survivor's misplay I was easily able to hit her not once, but twice at the same pallet loop. Ideally, you want the survivor to actually waste the pallet on top of all of this. This is how you can make very quick work of survivors who loop around a single small pallet loop. Now, I could talk all day about what perks to use, what maps are best for Pyramidhead, and discuss the new map and the new survivor, but I figured any more than 10 minutes is just a bit much to focus on a new killer. If you want an idea of what perks you might want to use with Pyramidhead, I'll post cheat sheets in the description below with what will probably be some of his best loadouts. That being said, if you focus on mastering Pyramidhead's power, you'll be wrecking survivors at rank 1, no matter what perk loadout you focus on, basically. Once again, this is a killer that many survivor and killer mains have pointed out is extremely powerful in the current meta, and may even get nerfed in the long run if survivors struggle against him. If this guide is outdated, I will create an updated guide. I may also create a part 2, jumping more in depth with perk loadouts, if you guys want to see that. Comment below what you think of Pyramidhead, and if you'd like to see a video concerning perk loadouts. In any case, I really appreciate you watching my video. If you find the video helpful, please shoot me a like, and subscribe to catch up with more Dead by Daylight guides. I do intend to create more killer guides with older killers if this series gets enough traction, since many killers have changed significantly since many other guides have been released. Stay tuned to catch more Dead by Daylight content by subscribing and hitting that little bell icon. Thank you again for watching my video, and if you're a fan, new or old, I'll catch you next time on the next video. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.